Book Invincible Thinking, Part 3, Life and Victory. Number 1, When a Philosophy Radiates Light. I have entitled Part 3, Life and Victory. One of the characteristics of this book, Invincible Thinking, is that it is not just abstract theory, because the theme is how to achieve continual victory in life. It needs to be a practical guide. When you are faced with a difficult situation, you probably want to know what you need to do in practical terms. Most people are looking for an answer to the question, what should I do? How should I go about solving this problem? Once your problem has been solved, you will find that most of your worries have disappeared, and you will reach the next stage in your development, moving forward in your life in a positive way. For this reason, I certainly do not underestimate the importance of philosophy or truth on the practical level. Although the theme of this book may be practical, everyday matters. If it succeeds in bringing people salvation and happiness, then so much the better. I have no intention of being active on only a philosophical level. I believe that only when a philosophy has the power to actually save large number of people does it give out light. In this part of book, I will consider what you need to master and the minimum number of obstacles you must overcome to be victorious in life. I have arranged this under the headings How to Live a Healthy Life, The Creation of Wealth, Spouse and Home, Encounters That Will Change Your Destiny, and a Spiritual Legacy, and I will tackle each of them in turn. While these themes will not allow you to learn everything that you need to be victorious in life, I am sure that they will enable you to reach a stage where you can overcome most basic problems. A lot depends on how far you are able to put the principles from the examples I give into practice, and whether you are able to use them as a central pillar around which to structure your own experiences. Number 2, how to live a healthy life. 1. Physical conditions restrict the mind. I would like to start by discussing the theme how to live a healthy life. When thinking about victory in life, health is a subject that cannot be avoided. I have written well over 100 books that have looked at problems related to the mind from many different angles. I have also gone beyond the individuals to discuss the mind of the grand cosmos. Although there are any number of grand themes, all of them inevitably start with the individual human being. Essentially, all human beings are spiritual beings. At the same time, we cannot deny that we are living now in this three-dimensional world. Although we are beings of the real world, and this is our true state, at present we are inhabitants of this world, and as such, we have to take on a form suitable for life in this realm. When I say this, I mean that we have to express ourselves through the physical body. Even high spirits have no alternative but to use a physical body to express themselves when they are here on earth. They cannot express themselves solely through the brilliance of the light they radiate. Even if they do give out light, they still have to communicate by talking with their mouths, appealing with their eyes, using the brain to write what they think. So they too are restricted by a physical form. This is a very important issue. The teaching of Institute for Research in Human Happiness do not deny the physical form. We do not say that because matter does not exist, we do not have to bother about the physical body. Our current teachings deal with the concern of the three-dimensional world and how human beings at present on this earth should live. So we cannot afford to ignore issues that concern the physical body. When talking specifically about the mind, we cannot ignore spiritual influences that affect everyone without exception. How to overcome negative spiritual influences is a major issue for each individual, and it is true that self-reflection is a very effective technique for achieving this. However, there is something we have to consider even before we begin self-reflection, and that is the fact that the mind is not dependent but bound by a set of conditions. One of these conditions is the physical body. If you do not have good control over your physical state, it will bring pressure to bear on the mind, causing it to move in wrong directions. Number 2, learn to control your physical body. Your body is like a bicycle that you have learned to ride well. Do you remember how it felt when you first sat on a bike? You probably could not understand how you were supposed to ride such an unstable contraption. When you were a child, I am sure that you first learned to ride with training wheels. These are the small wheels that attach to either side of the rear wheel to give the bicycle some stability, which you are getting used to riding it. A bicycle with these wheels seems very stable. However, when these training wheels are removed, leaving only the two big wheels front and back, the bicycle seems so unstable that it becomes extremely difficult to ride. You do not know how to keep your balance. Simply balancing is hard enough on its own, but at the same time, you also have to pedal to make the bike move forward. That is not all, and you have to look left and right, and when you come to a junction, you have to decide which direction you want to go. When you come to a slope, you have to make an effort to get up it, and then you have to use the brakes to control your speed as you come down the other side. Seen in this way, it is hardly surprising that you used to think of the bicycle as an unstable and downright dangerous machine. However, once you become used to riding one every day, it almost becomes an extension of your body and you can ride it without the slightest difficulty. Physical bodies are similar. In the beginning, they are very difficult to control and the soul feels very confined. Despite this, as you learn to control the body, the feeling of restriction fades and you discover that you can move in any way you want. The body gradually becomes a part of you. What is important to know that is that like a bicycle, once you know how to ride it, your body is very useful, but if for some reason you are unable to control it, it can be highly dangerous. It is like a child trying to ride an adult's bicycle. It is so perilous and unstable that the child will not be able to control it. It would be very hazardous if the brakes did not work or the handlebars were bent. Much the same can be said of the body. What I am trying to say here is that people who are able to maintain a good physical condition have taken the first step towards victory in life. There are no two ways about it. To a great extent, you are capable of mastering health care on the personal level. It is like taking care of a bicycle, checking for bent handlebars, inefficient brakes or flat tires. If you are capable and look after it, you will be able to avoid all these things. If, when your bicycle has a puncture, you say, "Oh, it doesn't matter, it will be alright," you will find that you cannot use it when you most need it. The same is true of the brakes. You may think, "Oh, there are not many cars around, so I'll be okay." But what will happen if a car suddenly pulls out in front of you? It is exactly the same with body. Number 3, the care of the body is up to the individual. As long as you maintain a healthy lifestyle, your physical body will work to accomplish its original purpose. If you do not look after your body, you cannot blame others. You are the only person able to look after it. Managing your physical body is your own personal task. An ex-officer in the Japanese self-defense forces once told me how his soldiers went about parachute training. First, the men practice jumping from a height of about 50 feet. Next, they jump off a tower about 100 feet high. Then, they jump out of an aeroplane 1000 feet above the sea level and their parachutes open when they get down to a certain height. Each soldier looks after his own parachute. If it does not open, it could cost a man his life. So it is only natural not to entrust it to anyone else. If it does not open because of his own lack of care, then a man cannot blame anyone else. If, on the other hand, someone else has been responsible for its not opening, the soldiers would not be able to complain enough. This example of parachute may sound rather odd, but you are in a similar situation. To take the example of parachute a little further, you could say that your soul is like the soldier and your body is parachute. If the parachute were to rip or fail to open, it would be a tragedy. In the same way, if the body suffers a serious handicap or injury, it is a severe ordeal for the soul to overcome, regardless of whether it is foreseen or not. At the very least, you should do everything you can to ensure that your body is kept out of danger. If you do not, the result is that your mind is affected negatively and you have only yourself to blame. It makes no difference which dimension of the spirit world you are born from. Even angels of light who have reincarnated become sick if they do not look after their bodies. It is an immutable law of this world. In the same way that a tire gets a puncture if a nail is been driven into it, the body will break down if it is not provided with a suitable amount of rest, nourishment, and care. If a professional baseball player were to be the opening pitcher every day, no matter how much he trained, he would not last more than a year at the most, because pitchers usually need at least 4 days of rest between matches if they are able to continue their careers. This is quite easy to understand when talking about baseball players, but when it comes to the individual, most of us are scarcely aware of this. It is very difficult to know how much you can work, how much rest you need, and what you need to do to maintain your body in peak condition. It is not something you learn at school, and as with the mind, the maintenance of the body is left in the hands of individual. Sometimes family members may help you stay in shape, but basically you have to do it on your own without the help of others. Number 4, the relationship between the body and mind. As people get older, they tend to complain more. This is a common occurrence among those in their 60s or 70s who at the same time begin to worry about what might happen in the future and what has happened in the past. You may think that this is a problem of the mind, but why should it be that it affects people more than they get older? The main reason is that people find their bodies have become much weaker than they used to be. As people age, their legs become weak and they are no longer able to get around as they once did. They become petulant, complaining constantly, and the people around them find them increasingly difficult to live with. Eventually, this can lead to problems within the family. The root of the problem is quite simple. After retirement, these people have not bothered to exercise their bodies, and this develops into a problem of the mind. But it is not just one person's problem, it involves the whole family and can become quite serious. Basically, after retirement, people have fewer opportunities to use their bodies, and often they have done nothing to compensate for this in other ways. Younger people too often have problems that involve their bodies. They are some who eat too much and some who become so thin that they appear anorexic in both cases. The reason is that they have forgotten how to lead a balanced life. There are those who love cakes and think that true happiness is eating 2 cakes a day. They cut down on other food and diet to avoid getting fat, so it is hardly surprising they feel unwell. But in spite of this, they continue this behavior. I understand how they feel, but I wish they would pull themselves together. If they are unable to stop despite the fact that they have made themselves ill, then they have only themselves to blame for whatever happens next. People cannot live on cake alone. They need additional nutrients. The same is true of people who eat nothing but chocolate until their teeth rot. It is no one else's fault. They cannot lay the blame on God. The only person responsible for the fact that teeth are falling out is the person who ate too much chocolate. So you need to take responsibility and look after your own body. This is particularly true of exercise. No one is going to tell you to get more exercise. No one will tell you how much you should go about it. So you need to think of your body as something precious that has to be looked after and engage in whatever exercise you feel is appropriate to the environment in which you live. The stronger your body, the stronger your mind becomes. If you are fit, you will feel positive, but if your body is weak, you will feel increasingly pessimistic about everything. So when you are feeling good, concentrate on positive thinking, and when you are feeling bad, spend more time in self-reflection. Self-reflection is difficult when you are feeling euphoric or when you are running around in a state of elation. So at these times, concentrate on positive thinking. Conversely, when you are slightly depressed, reflect on what you have done. Then you will become expert at utilizing both these techniques. I would like you to think about them in addition to look after your health. Number 3, the creation of wealth. Number 1, problem connected to having a religious disposition. The next theme I would like to discuss is the creation of wealth. There are a lot of people of a religious disposition who see money negatively, believing it is wrong for them to have wealth. This is true of followers of both Buddhism and Christianity. The more point to consider here is that a person's level of poverty depends on the degree to which he or she feels wealth is wrong. Someone who believes strongly that possessing wealth will make it impossible for them to enter heaven will never become rich. If that is all they believe, it is not such a big problem. However, if they envy those who are rich and begin to criticize them, they will create hell in their own hearts. This is an example of the disharmony that self-constraint can create. If you simply have no desire for money or other forms of luxury and have no attachment to them, then this could be considered a virtue. However, if you start to castigate those who are affluent and tell them their wealth will banish them to hell, a dark smog will begin to cover your mind and you will create an inner hell for yourself. It may seem strange, but that is the way it works. Once you begin to bind yourself by exhibiting a tendency to criticize others, you had better watch out. Another simple example is the problem created by the opposite sex. Money and the opposite sex are both subjects that are frequently misunderstood by people of a religious disposition. These are even people who believe that if they marry, they will be barred from heaven, and those who want to believe that this will happen. I do not know which is more common, but such people actually do exist. Number 2, wealth as a means to happiness. To find a solution to the problem posed by wealth, you have to ask yourself why wealth exists. Wealth can refer to money or to the other assets, but why does it exist? The reason wealth exists in this world is as a way of expressing the richness that exists in the real world. The real world is not a poor place. Wealth takes a variety of forms, and then there is a law that states the pure in heart will receive whatever they wish for. The inhabitants of the real world all live in purity, so that they are all prosperous. However, the way in which wealth is expressed in the real world does not exist in the three-dimensional world. So people try and use money as a substitute means of expression. Of course, wealth does not necessarily have to be money, but money is a convenient form expression. The question is how money is used. In other words, good and evil in relation to wealth in this world are dependent on the motives and intentions of the user. For instance, if an organization wants to build a hall, it will need money. If by building the hall it is able to hold conferences and meetings that benefit people, then it is money well spent. They will also be able to rent the hall out to others when they are not using it themselves, so providing a facility. This is an example of how capital creates space, and in doing so, it furnishes people with places to carry out activities that will bring joy and happiness. So by creating space, money can be said to have created happiness. It is regrettable that wealth causes so many people to stumble. If we really want to help improve the world, those who are pure in heart must teach others how to use wealth correctly. We must also make sure that wealth is created in correct way. If this can be achieved, the world will be a better place. I believe that wealth should be channeled towards the construction of an ideal society here on earth. This is important, as wealth is the means of achieving happiness for a greater number of people. Number 3, poverty tainted by envy is wrong. Here, I would like to say that you cannot bend other people's principle. If you believe in purity through poverty, then no one will oppose you. If you wish to live your life according to that principle, then by all means go ahead. This is an acceptable way of living. However, If you do decide to live this way, you must also decide not to feel jealous of others. If you are content to live in honest poverty, then that is your decision as an individual. But you should never judge others. People all have different ways of living and different ways of thinking. When you elect to live in poverty, do not try to force others to do the same. Never express jealousy or envy. This is most important. If your decision to live in honest poverty becomes tainted by envy, then poverty itself will be transformed into something negative. If, on the other hand, it allows you to get rid of attachment to material things and the vibration of your mind is still pure, then poverty becomes a virtue. But if poverty leads to jealousy and envy of the material possessions of others, your heart will become clouded and poverty can be considered wrong. If you discover this negativity in yourself or in those around you, you need to fight to vanquish it. If you feel restricted by poverty, if it makes you feel miserable and envious of others, then you should make an effort to break out of it. Some people worry because they have too much money, but compared to those who have no money or who are in debt, it can generally be said that they are in a much better position to find harmony in their hearts. It is often said that to have enough money to not have to worry is good, and basically I agree with this. Sufficient money to allow you to live without privation is a good thing. If you cannot admit this, your life will be one of envy and misery. So if you want to live a life of honest poverty, do not envy others. If you cannot help being jealous, then make an effort to break out of poverty. It is important to set goals to create a certain amount of wealth and then make the effort necessary to achieve them. Number 4. 3 basic principles for the creation of wealth. There are 3 basic principles for the creation of wealth. The first principle, which has always been true, is thrift. That is to say, economy, frugality, and cutting out waste. This is the starting point. If you are wasteful or live in an extravagant life, no matter how much money you have, you will gradually use it all. There is an old proverb that runs, "The third generation goes back to the mill." Someone from the first generation will work hard and take over the mill where he is employed. Someone of the second generation will expand the business. Someone of the third generation will cause the company to go bankrupt and go back to the mill and become a laborer. In most cases, this is because the third generation allow their lifestyle to become too grand and forget the hard work. As a result, they waste their money and soon find themselves ruined. This is true in both corporate and private life, and that is why I say that thrift, economy, and frugality are vitally important. However, this is not to say you should become a miser. Unfortunately, misers never achieve real wealth either. So, I am not recommending that you begrudge every penny you spend. I want you to avoid waste. It is important that you are moderate in use of money so as not to waste the good fortune you have. The second principle for the creation of wealth is that money accumulates around those who know how to use it. It will not suddenly appear in the middle of field, but it will come to those who know what it is for. Huge sums of money accumulate in banks, and the reason for this is that banks are able to use the money to produce more. It is because they understand how to use that money and that the money comes to them. The same is true on a personal level. Money will accumulate for those who know how to make use of it. For instance, if you decide that you want to build a house of your own, you will work harder to acquire the necessary finance. Or if you have a lot of children and you want to see them all through university, you will have to increase your earnings to achieve this. In this way, money comes to people who know how to use it. So if you feel that you would like to be wealthier, it is important that first you have a clear idea of how you intend to use the money. You have to be able to say to yourself, I need money for such and such a reason. So I want to be more prosperous. People who feel that they do not need money will never become rich. Even if they do succeed in acquiring a certain amount of wealth, it will only be on a limited scale. Real wealth only comes to those who have a clear idea of what they want the money for. All over the world, wealth is overflowing, looking for those who know how to use it. If these people appear, the money will automatically flow to them. In this money can be said to resemble blood in a body. It flows to the places where it is needed most. There are a large number of people in the world who possess a lot of money but do not know how to use it. That is why when someone proposes a good idea about how to make use of money, wealth will automatically flow to them. A good example of this is a new business. When people start a business, they find that the necessary capital will come together. Banks will invest in the business, as will partners. Someone may appear and provide office space. So help comes from many different directions. It all begins with good ideas that move people's hearts. These attract energy from different places, which in turn summons wealth. Wealth will gravitate to people with ideas and enthusiasm. In other words, people who know how to use it. It is important to have lofty ideas about how to use wealth. The third principle is the same as that of the laws of the mind, which is people who give will receive. If you succeed in gathering wealth, you should not try to monopolize it for yourself. Wealth will certainly circulate to you if you try and use it so to contribute to improving the lifestyle of others and bringing them happiness. In other words, if you use your money just for your own sake, it will gradually disappear, but if you try to use it for the sake of as many people as possible, you will find that it will continue to grow and multiply. Let us look at the example of the work of famous American automobile manufacturer Henry Ford. In his lifetime, Henry Ford succeeded in amassing a huge fortune. The reason he was able to do this was that he dreamed of a time when everyone, even office employees and manual laborers, would be able to buy a car of their own. He wanted to build a car that people would be able to buy out of their own wages with a single year's earning, and gradually he was able to see his dream come true. In part 1 of this book, I talked about Konosuke Matsushita, the man who used to advocate what he called the tap water philosophy. Although water is not free, there is such an inexhaustible supply that it appears to be. Even if a complete stranger stops and drinks from the tap in front of your house, you do not call him a thief or say that he has stolen your water. Water is not free, and he drinks it without your permission. So, in the strictest sense of the law, he could be called a thief. But water is supplied at such a nominal cost that we think of it as being virtually free. So, no one is going to call a man a thief for drinking it. Although he may have helped himself, no one is going to feel they have been robbed. Mr. Matsushita's goal was to produce useful domestic electrical appliances cheaply, so people would think of them in the same way they think of water, and this was what he referred to as the tap water philosophy. It is a form of philosophy of love, as he hoped his company succeeded in producing cheap electrical goods, and the result is that the current earnings are now hundreds of billions of yen per annum. Love and wealth are given to those with a giving heart. They circulate and return to the giver and accumulate to create even greater wealth. So, to achieve infinite development, learning to share your wealth with others in the same way that you share your love is essential. This is not to say that you should give your money to beggars. It is important that you use it so that it is able to be of service to others in many different ways. There are numerous variations of methods of attaining wealth, but the three that I have described represent the basic methods. First, use your money with moderation. Second, have a clear idea of how to use wealth. And third, be prepared to use what you have accumulated for the sake of others. If you follow these three principles, your wealth will not be considered wrong. As long as you observe these rules, your wealth will be a divine blessing. As you go about creating wealth, I would like you to bear this in mind and remember that having greater influence through wealth is definitely not to be thought of as something negative. Number 4. Spouse and home. 1. Start by making yourself into your own ideal. As the third theme, I want you to consider the issue of spouses and the home. I would like to begin by looking at how to marry the ideal spouse. Some people worry about this for 5, 10, even 20 years, but the answer is surprisingly simple. Contrary to what you probably expect, an ideal spouse is not someone you can find through pursuit. In fact, the harder you chase an ideal, the further you will move away from it. I can almost hear you saying, "That cannot be true." You are always telling us that effort will be rewarded and to those who ask shall be given. What do you mean? If we chase, the object will flee. That sounds very pessimistic. Of course, those who ask shall be given and effort will be rewarded are both truth, but in this section I am talking about marrying and the rules are somewhat different. Focusing on this, while it is true that if you have the will to marry, you can achieve it. If you try hard and chase an ideal, you will be kept away from it. This could be likened to dogs or cats chasing their own tails. You may have observed a puppy or kitten that has seen its own tail and tries to catch it. But no matter how hard it tries, it never succeeds. However, if it forgets about it and moves forward, the tail will follow. Finding a spouse is very much like this. People often refer to their spouse as their better half, and it is in fact true that a spouse is like a part of yourself. If you chase an ideal, it will move away, but if you behave naturally and move forward, it will follow. This may sound strange, but it is a very apt metaphor. What I would like to say here is, first, you must make yourself into the kind of a person your ideal spouse would want to marry. You may have various images of your ideal partner, but the first thing you need to do is to better yourself so that when the person of your dreams comes along, he or she will want to marry you. The first priority should not be going out and searching for your ideal partner. If you even make a list of all the characteristics you would look for in a spouse, saying, "This is my ideal, this is the kind of the person I want to marry," then go and search for someone with them. Unfortunately, you will never find what you are looking for. Instead, you need to consider that kind of person your ideal partner would want to marry if he or she were to turn up. If you have set about making yourself into that person, then you will find your ideal partner will soon appear. The reason I say this is that when you marry, it is important that both partners are an ideal match for one another. It is very important at this point that you match perfectly. This means that if you simply imagine your ideal partner and go in search of an ideal, you will not be able to find it unless you make yourself it to the kind of person who is right match. Even if you do meet, the other person will simply pass you by like an express train speeding through a station. It is okay to search for an ideal and carry that image in your mind, but first you must think about how you would appear if you were ever to meet your ideal. Suppose you had a crush on a famous film star and went to see him or her make a speech. What would you do if that person talked to you and put their arms around your shoulders? It is very likely you would run away and you would never be able to marry your ideal if you behaved like that. If you run away out of fear or embarrassment, you will never get close. You must work on yourself so that when you do meet that person, he or she will think that you are the ideal partner. This is a very important point. For young people, especially, it is vital that you establish yourself in a career because you will always achieve what is most important through your work, as well as the prospect of financial success. It is extremely important that young people have a clear vision of their future. There are a lot of people who, despite the fact that they are introduced to numerous prospective partners, are unable to marry. This kind of person will most likely say that they cannot find anyone they like or they cannot find an ideal partner. In actual fact, the problem is that they are unable to assess themselves objectively. As a result of this inability to look at themselves objectively, they are unable to say what kind of person would you make a suitable partner. They keep raising and lowering their sights, trying hard to find someone to be with, but in the end they cannot find anyone. However, if they were able to say exactly what their own future prospects were, they would soon discover someone who suited them. It does not matter whether they work for a company or start their own business. They must be able to say, I work for such and such a company, my future will develop in such and such a way, and I will earn this much money in the future. If they are able to do this and are enthusiastic, they are sure to find a suitable partner. If you think that your job is boring and you want to leave as soon as possible, I am afraid that no matter how many people you are introduced to, you will never find the ideal partner. Again, if you tell yourself you want to leave your present position but you are waiting until you have tied the knot so as not to spoil your chances of marriage, I am afraid you will not find the right person. It is very strange. But that is the way life works. Whether you are a man or a woman, what it boils down to in the end is that you have to make yourself into the kind of the person your ideal partner would want to be with. This is what is most important. Number 2. Can you achieve a deep understanding of your partner? The second point I would like to discuss in this context, the most important prerequisite if you intend to marry, regardless of whether you are a man or a woman, which is that you are capable of understanding your partner. There are lots of other conditions that you have to be met, but this one has top priority. You may worry about appearances, whether someone is attractive or ugly, tall or short, fat or thin, whether he or she has a lot of money or a good scholastic record. There are all sort of factors to choose from, and as a result, many people do not know which to place most emphasis on. A person may be clever but poor, handsome but short, beautiful but stupid. So people cannot make up their minds about which criteria are most important. You could try asking others for advice, but you will probably end up even more confused than before. One person may say that looks are most important, another that you should not worry about appearances but concentrate on a person's disposition, a third may remark the intelligence is very thing to look for, while a fourth may insist that a good background is vital. It is very difficult to decide, and I am so sorry to have to say that you will never come across a person who meets all your conditions. You will have to accept someone who has one or two shortcomings, so the question has to be where you place your priorities. To talk in generalities, what is most important is to look for someone you can understand. It doesn't matter how much money a person has, because once it has all been used, there will be nothing left between you. Although a person may be very good looking, the attraction will fade as you see them every day. Although you may want to marry someone because they have a great personality, one day you will realize that they also have faults. All that leaves is a deep mutual understanding. A good mutual understanding is something that will continue for 20, 30, even 40 years. Whereas if you look only at external or objective characteristics, although you may get on well when you first marry, the rapport between you will gradually break down and cracks will appear in the relationships. Suppose a woman thinks that academic status is the most important characteristics in a man and marries someone who has graduated from one of top universities. Although he may have studied hard when he was young, after leaving universities he may have become very fond of drinking, staying out every night from Monday to Friday and coming home late with his face as red as a beet. She may have married him because he went to an elite university. But if he drinks till his whole body turns red, he is never without a drink and even drinks in the morning before he goes to office, she is bound to be disappointed. Sometimes people can change after marriage. Perhaps this woman married his better half because she thought she was intelligent. Unfortunately, however, intelligence and academic achievement are not always the same. Truly intellectual people do not necessarily do well in school. While there is some correlation between intelligence and scholastic ability, it is not 100%. In fact, I would say that in most cases the correlation is about 60 to 70%. This variation comes about as a result of individual inclinations. For instance, someone with an intellectual bent will become increasingly intellectual despite the fact that the person may not even have been to high school. As this sort of people grow older, by 30 or 40 years of age, they have gradually turned into genuine intellectuals, whereas someone who was forced to study as a child may grow up to detest it. Although the person who has forced to study may actually be a very clever individual, he may end up like the person in the example I gave just now, coming home drunk every night and throwing away a career. Although he may have been highly intelligent at 22 or 23, by the time he reaches 40, he has become a completely different person. There are various factors on which to base the decision to marry, but if you're going to take just one, then you should look at how well you can understand the other person. Ask yourself if you have a deep understanding of your partner, whereas you can understand him or her outlook on life. If you feel that you can see through the depths of his or her character, then the chances are that you will have a happy married life. Ask yourself how far your prospective partner is capable of understanding your thoughts on work or life. Is your partner capable of only a shallow appreciation, or does your partner possess deep insights into the way you think? If you feel strongly that he or she can understand you and that his understanding is mutual, then it is probably safe to go ahead and marry. In this section, I have described two ways of finding the ideal spouse. The first is not to chase the person you wish to marry, rather to alter yourself to fit to other person's ideal. Secondly, I stress the importance of understanding whether or not you have the ability to understand a prospective spouse, and whether he or she can understand you is very important. Number 3, you need to work to make a perfect match. Next, I would like to touch on how to sustain a relation after marriage. Although a couple may be happy in period immediately following their marriage, there are people whose relationships gradually break down, which leads to separations. The people who are most likely to suffer this kind of outcome are those who believe that men and women are like a lock and key, that each must match the other perfectly. They believe that if they marry a certain type of person, they will be able to achieve happiness, but if they do not, the marriage will end up in acrimony. People who see others in this way as some kind of object will often find that their marriages end in failure. They may have thought they could find true happiness if they married person A, whereas if they married person B, they would not. If they feel that things did not work out because they ended up marrying B, it is hardly surprising that their marriage has not lasted. An ideal match between people is something that has to be worked on. It is not something that just happens, allowing people to live happily ever after. If a couple finds that they get along to a certain extent, after that they have to work at their relations to make it a perfect match. This means that before you say your partners do not suit you, you need to ask yourself if there is something that you could do, some idea that you have not thought of, some effort that is lacking in you. Both a man and a woman must make every effort to understand their partner. Please try and act in this way. Actually, there are not many people you cannot get on with at all. Once you have reached a certain stage, it is simply a matter of effort. You may have numerous crises in your relationship, but when they threaten to destroy it, you must be inventive and ingenious in finding a way to overcome them. This willingness to make an effort is something I hope you will never forget. Number 5, encounters that will change your destiny. 1. Expect to encounter a noble person. The fourth theme I would like to talk about is fateful encounters. My readers are all of different ages, and if you are around 20 years old, you have probably only met 1 or 2 people who have changed your life. In fact, you may have yet to meet any. However, as you get older and reach 30, 40 or 50, you will encounter people who have a hand in changing your life. If you look back over your life, you will notice several major turning points. At each of them, there was someone who had an influence on your destiny. Whenever you look at this kind of turning point, you will always find a person who affected you in some way. Whenever you come to a junction in your life and have to decide whether to turn left, turn right, or go straight ahead, you are sure to find someone standing there to help you. In many cases, your destiny changes according to how you handle the encounter with the person. Of course, what you want at such time is someone who will change your destiny for the better. But sometimes the opposite happens. There are people who discover that as the result of a chance meeting, their lives take a sharp turn for the worse. Perhaps they are cheated or go into the business with someone only to find themselves bankrupt. Perhaps a teacher at school gives some advice which, when followed, leads to disaster. Although this kind of things can happen, the kind of encounter I would like to consider here is to be positive one. To succeed in life, it is important that you treasure meetings with people who can lead you to happiness and good fortune. In China, there is a concept of a noble person, and a common greeting is that country is having, have you met a noble person recently? In most cases, the expression refers to someone with integrity, someone of a higher rank, better educated or richer than you, and at the very least in a position to help you better yourself. I have heard this greeting is frequently used in daily life. In the same way, as you inquire about someone's health or current situation, an encounter with a noble person is of a great significance. At the Institute of Research in Human Happiness, we stress the importance of individual effort and self-discipline, but this can be both linked to a staircase you can only progress up one step at a time. On the other hand, the appearance of a noble person can be compared to an elevator. Once you get up into the elevator, you can travel a number of stores almost instantaneously, and when you get out, you will find yourself in a completely different world from the one you have just left. This is something that happens several times in the course of a life. To put it in another way, everyone meets people who usher in good luck. I am sure you have experienced an encounter with someone who has changed your life completely. It is very true that every turning point in your life, there is someone who says something, maybe without much thought or not very seriously, and this later acts as an important guide for you. The person in question may have forgotten the incident, but this definitely happens. So there are times when someone appears and offers you the key to better fortune, and when they do, it is important that you listen to their advice or opinion and move in the right direction. It is impossible to say just when this person will appear before you, because the timing of this encounter differs from the person to person. But you should always be ready to make the most of a meeting with someone who will guide you. If you wish for this sort of encounter, you can be sure that the person will appear. When you do come across this person, you will begin to radiate light, and no matter who you are, you can be quite sure that there will be this sort of dazzling time at some point in course of your life. People who say that they have never experienced this are probably ungrateful or have forgotten. It comes in many forms, so please think carefully about this, as it really will provide you with the key to a great step forward. The more you have prepared yourself for this kind of encounter, the greater the likelihood of this happening. So every year, hold yourself in readiness and expect that someone will offer you advice that will lead you in a better direction and open up a bright future. Because if you do, this sort of person will always appear. If you hold yourself in readiness for this sort of encounter every month, then the right person will appear before you on a monthly basis. The possibility of this meeting occurs depends on how strong you anticipate them. The reason for this is that if you constantly anticipate this sort of encounters, it will spur your guardian spirit or other guiding spirits to cause one to come out. They begin to think that you should be rewarded for sustaining such a laudable attitude, and they go about finding someone who will be able to help you to get ahead. You may actually come to a turning point in your life through meeting this sort of person directly, or it may happen through the agency of your guardian spirit without you realizing. However, either way, something will definitely happen. People are always watching you. They see you on different occasions, and many of them would like to do something to help you get ahead. The first prerequisite for meeting this kind of person is the earnest desire for this sort of encounter. Number 2, listen humbly to what you are told. The second prerequisite for fateful encounters is humility. It is important that you admit to yourself there are many people in this world who are wiser than you, and when you meet one of them, you need to listen humbly to what they say. If you fail to listen, you will miss your opportunity. You should always be on the lookout for words that might lead you to change yourself, and expect encounters with people who make crucial comments. Next, you should make sure that you do not miss what they say so that you do not waste a valuable encounter. When you feel this is the goddess of happiness, the goddess of good fortune,
soon.
Do not let it pass you by, but make the most of the chance that is being offered. This kind of fateful meeting is one of the most important events of your life. It is really a shining moment, so I would like you to take it seriously. It is the time when you are standing at the crossroads of destiny, and all kind of people will offer their assistance to allow you to change your life. If you believe that you have achieved what you have solely through your own efforts, you are quite mistaken. It is impossible to achieve anything by yourself. So I would like you to remain humble and do not forget to listen to what people tell you. As this part is entitled Life and Victory, you may have been expecting to hear about achievement through one's own efforts, but contrary to your expectation, the way to true victory lies in a helping hand from others. Opportunities are offered by many. If a lot of people are trying to help you further your career, it is quite difficult not to succeed. If, on the other hand, a lot of people are trying to stop you from succeeding, it becomes very difficult to get ahead and require an immense effort. If others want to help you, you can be successful simply by going with the flow. This is something you need to be grateful for. To sum up, people do not achieve success by their own efforts alone. It is important always to remember that it is through the help of others that you are able to achieve your goals. Number 3, having a grateful heart. I would be lying if I were to say that it did not take a lot of effort to get to where I am now, but the reason I was able to walk this path, I did it because I received the support of a large number of people on earth, as well as help from heaven. In the usual terms, I suppose this could be described as luck, but for someone like me who knows about the existence of real world firsthand, it is impossible to use the word luck. I know that this is a result of the cooperation of those who reside in the other world, and it is through their very real work that I have been blessed with such good fortune. This feeling of gratitude is very important. When your fortune takes a turn for the better, you do not forget to express your gratitude. If you are able to be blessed by an upturn in fortune, it is important to remember these 3 points. Firstly, always seek earnestly and anticipate a change in your fortune. Second, remain humble and listen to the advice. Third, always have gratitude in your heart. If you follow these rules, I believe that when you reach a turning point in life, it will be one that truly radiates light. Number 6, a spiritual legacy. 1. Integrity as a spiritual legacy. For the 5th and final theme, I would like to discuss the subject of a spiritual legacy. In the first section, I discussed how to live a healthy life. In the second, I considered the creation of wealth. In third, the spouse and home. And in fourth, I talk about encounters that can change your destiny. Open bracket, fateful encounters, bracket close. Depending on the way in which you read them, they may create the impression of a guide to material success or an explanation of how to get ahead in the world. However, this part is entitled Life and Victory, and it is impossible to discuss this fully without considering what is beyond mere worldly success. It is vital that you go beyond earthly success. Unless you possess that which surpasses earthly success, you cannot claim to have achieved true victory in life. What is it that transcends worldly success? I always teach of a happiness that continues both in this world and the next, a form of happiness that you can take with you when you die. What form does this happiness take? It is very spiritual and can be described as a treasure of heart that is not of this world. In other words, to those who have come into contact with and understand the laws of truth, victory in life means more than just worldly success. It would be no exaggeration to say that unless you have grasped something greater, a spiritual legacy, it cannot be said that you have been victorious in life. I have introduced this idea in numerous books before, and you have perhaps already studied it. However, I would like you to run through this one more time. A spiritual legacy is a very abstract sounding phrase, but if I were to give it another name, I would call it integrity. Ability is something that you are born with. Its seeds are there from the day you arrive in this world. Even if you do not cultivate them, the potential is there and it is left to you to develop. Integrity, however, is something that you do not possess when you are born. It is something that comes into being in the course of your life here in the three-dimensional world. It is an acquired trait. Of course, it goes without saying that the high spirits of the world, of the real world, for example, the angels of light in the seventh dimension possess integrity, but even they are not endowed with it when they are born into this world. However, they do not have abilities. You are born with abilities, but not with integrity. However, they do have abilities. You are born with abilities but not with integrity. Number 2. Two ways the integrity comes into being. So how do you acquire integrity? It develops gradually over a period of several decades. But do you have any idea how it comes into being? There are two sorts of circumstances through which integrity can be acquired. One is in the midst of discouragement, failure and adversity. The other is through success. These are the times when integrity can be most easily attained. Of course, integrity can be achieved to a lesser extent at other times in your life, but great integrity, which stands as a memorial of your life, comes into being through these two experiences. Let us think about why integrity comes into existence at times when we feel discouraged, disappointed, or face adversity. It is quite usual to complain about bad luck when suffering adversity, but as you may know, there are some people who do not just grumble and bemoan their misfortune. Most people, when they make a mistake, blame luck or their circumstances at the time. They may accuse other things of letting them down or even blame their guardian spirits, but most cannot stand the pressures adversity and discouragement bring. Others who have achieved a slightly higher state of consciousness will not allow themselves to be crushed by adversity but try to accept it for what it is, enduring it. People who try to bear their misfortune in this way are better than the average. Above this stand the people who make the effort to live optimistic, happy lives despite adversity. These people can be said to stand on the bottom rungs of a higher level of consciousness. However, the people who are really to be admired are those who are invincible thinking. However, the people who are really to be admired are those who use invincible thinking to counteract all adversity. When faced with misfortune, they are able to detect a divine intention in it and ask themselves what this affliction is supposed to teach them. They are sure to learn the lesson from their setback. They read the divine intention in their predicament and ask themselves what is it that they need, what this adversity is trying to teach them, and use this as the basis upon which to build their character, or as to principle underpinning their actions. People who experience this develop integrity. They possess an extraordinary strength that radiates light. To be able to endure difficulties or disappointment is in itself remarkable, but really extraordinary people read the divine intention in their experience, search within it for some seed that will lead them to success, and then nurture that seed. To be able to achieve this is truly extraordinary, and here integrity comes into being. The second sort of circumstances that give rise to integrity involves success. People who People whose names go down in history are those who have experienced success in their lives. No matter how many times they have failed, in the end they have achieved great success. Take Abraham Lincoln for example. He was defeated in elections, his personal relationships failed, and he suffered a succession of hardships, including his fiance's death. But finally, he became the President of the United States and left behind great achievements. Had he not become President, he would not be remembered as a great historical figure to this day. In the end, he did achieve success. Even if you experience a succession of setbacks, you will eventually have the chance to bloom. When success finally comes, the way you handle it is very important. You must not try to claim the fruits of success for yourself. Rather, tell yourself that it was not achieved by your own efforts, but by the will of heaven. Although you may have supplied the water and fertilizer while it was still embryonic in form, you did not bring it about by yourself. The flower of success was already present inside the seed when it was offered to you, and it blossomed of its own accord. You simply helped it on its way, supplying it with water and nourishment. This is how you should regard it. Do not take the credit yourself. Rather, consider that although you may have assisted it to a certain extent, it came about through the will of heaven.